that the situation with education directly influences national security, so we take all reasonable necessary efforts so that the education is steady and high quality. So there was a resolution taken during a number of coordination meetings with coordination with the future students and their parents. This year the Ministry of Education and Study will have a campaign based on the national multi-subject test. Last Friday, during the meeting of the Committee of the Parliament for Education and Innovations, we voted the new model of education, and the only thing that is remaining is to vote for amendments on the relevant law of Ukraine on education. But our members of parliament promised that it will happen. It's about to happen quite shortly. Well, yeah, let's talk about those rules, since they are not yet legally approved, but now that we have the understanding of how it will be organized, we have this understanding. Oh yeah, obviously we do. For the time being, there are still no amendments to the legislation. It's not yet final, but there is already the coordinated stance of all the parties involved. What will be the difference? What will be the difference of national multi-subject test with the one of the previous year? This year there will be 3 subjects. 2 will be mandatory, Ukrainian language and mathematics, and the 3rd subject is to be picked by the students: physics, chemistry, biology, geography. It will be the exam will be held as the software-based test, which includes 180 questions. Why Ukrainian language and mathematics will be the mandatory subjects? Because they give validity and they give the students, the future students, the opportunity to study in the relevant fields, in the relevant faculties of their choice. The rest of the subjects will be approved after the amendments to the legislation are about to be voted, and the specialization will be picked by the students, then be based on that 3rd non-mandatory subject, and the students will be able to submit their documents for entry to any higher educational institution, and they will be able to submit more than 20 applications or up to 20 applications this year. So the inclusion of this 3rd subject will be an opportunity for school students, for a future higher educational university student to improve their score on the test. Yeah, obviously, if they're going to be the philologists, they will feel easier to have for example, English language test, and those with a technical, so to say, way of thinking, they will be able to pick either chemistry, physics, or biology. For someone would think it's better to have a test in biology, and the other ones would pick history, for example. Well, yeah, it's clear now. If we have questions in the studio, please go ahead. Victoria Shevchenko, Ukrinform. I have a question. May the multi-subject test replace the all-national test, or will it be replaced in future completely? Well, thank you for this question. I'm not saying this for the first time, but the nationwide independent test is something that is set forth in our legislation, and to add any amendments to this will require complete review of the legislation. And now we're talking about the format. In the view of a security situation and military and political situation in Ukraine, we're having national multi-subject test this year, so I'm sure that After the victory, we will return to the nationwide independent testing. Why? Because it's only one-day testing, and it's all related to the security of those who are about to pass it. Then there is a logistic component, and we cannot, and the third, we cannot hold the nationwide independent testing for those students who are currently abroad. So we want those children who are currently abroad not have any logistic difficulties to get to the spot where the nationwide independent testing is being held. Well, can we view this matter as a part of a bigger story when Ukrainian universities, they have to compete with the universities abroad for Ukrainian graduate? So those rules you're currently talking about, do we understand it correctly that they are called to make entry to the Ukrainian university more attractive for a Ukrainian student? Oh yeah, obviously I completely agree with you, because since the beginning of the first entry campaign during the war, it proved the efficiency of national multi-subject test, and the number of those who entered the higher educational institutions exceeded all of our expectations. So we think that this format allows our national universities and institutes compete with those abroad, and it makes it comfortable for Ukrainian students who prove themselves to be very capable and very smart. So what's the attractiveness? What's the fundamentals of this attractiveness? How this format should be attractive for a Ukrainian graduate? It's comprehensible and simple. It happens within one day. If we get back to nationwide independent testing, it takes a couple of days, and now during these turbulent times and this crazy mobility of Ukrainians who change the spot of their dwelling on sometimes very frequently, it can pose some difficulties to the children who should pass this national multi-subject test, because the nationwide independent testing should not be interrupted, and this is not the case that may happen during the air raid alert. And the national multi-subject test, it contemplates such possibility, so children can go down to a shelter. So in a number of regions, we even outfitted the shelters, and we were held in this national multi-subject test right in the shelter, so the test is not interrupted, because our children now is under absolutely incredible test, under this incredible pressure from the Russians. So we have to create the conditions for our children, even apart from this stress which is posed by the situation with testing itself. Well, you mentioned about the possibility of expansion of some places where children can pass the national multi-subject test abroad, to establish such locations. Yes, we are currently in contact with our colleagues from the ministries of education of European countries, and we are sure that we will be able to expand the network of such locations. We analyzed it last year, and the biggest problem for Ukrainian kids was the logistic problem, so that they couldn't get to this location for passing the national multi-subject test. We think that we should establish locations and to expand such locations. So can you give us a figure? What is the number of participants for such national multi-subject test, and how this network will be expanded abroad? Do we have any mathematics that we can tell year 2022 from 23? Well, the number of the graduates that we expect Well, let's talk about the concrete figures maybe later when the legislation is already voted. And then we will implement that roadmap that is being currently developed. But for the time being, let's wait just a little bit. So let's talk about the second semester of this year, of this education year. What will be specific about it? What should those who follow the news in the education sphere, what should they expect? Well, first of all, it's this political situation in Ukraine. We hope that thanks to our armed forces, the area where our children will be able to study will become only bigger and bigger and grow comparing to the first semester, because the number of the students who have access to this hybrid mode of education, both offline and offline, online and offline, that this number will only grow. So we hope that it may all be happening in future, that the security situation in our country will help us so that our children may communicate with the teachers face to face. Mostly our attention will be drawn to the security and the quality of education services provided. So now we hold the test of the quality of education to identify any education gaps. Well, if we don't have any questions in the studio, my last question will be as follows: how the educational system copes with the challenges created by the strikes on the energy infrastructure. We know that many schools turned into resilience stations. How does the system cope with those additional challenges? Thank you for your question. Now, during the martial law, we don't have any simple answers, simple solutions. But again, thanks to our heroic workers of our employees of our education sphere, they help in establishing and outfitting the resilience stations. The number of resilience stations is measured in thousands, not only in schools, but also in the professional colleges and higher educational institutions. And Ukraine is the only country in the history of the world who did not stop the educational process during the active phase of warfare. So I hope that the Ukrainian education system copes with all the challenges posed by the war in Ukraine. Andriy Vitrenko, First Deputy Minister of Education and Science, thank you for this conversation, and we call everybody to follow the announcements of Ukraine Media Center of Ukrinform. Stand with Ukraine.
Спасибі. А хто нас не буде писати з цього?
І наш, як і